What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Coach Falcon Chess YouTube channel. We are going back to back with historical games, and in this one, we are going to talk about my favorite game of all time. Now, if you didn't see my last video, we did the opera game where it was played by Paul Morphy with the white pieces against two dukes. We talked a little bit about Paul Morphy, showed the brilliance. Go check that out. Go show some love. That was actually my first ever video. In this one, we are going to look at a game played by Russian master Stepan Levitsky and American champion Frank Marshall. Now, we're looking at it from Black's perspective because this video is a little bit about Frank Marshall, but who Frank Marshall is kind of the most interesting part. He was a U.S. champion. Not only was he a U.S. champion, though, he won in 1909, and he held on to that title until 1936. That's 27 years. I did the math in the calculator. 27 years of pure dominance at U.S. chess. He was also captain of the U.S. chess team. The Olympiad team carried them to 4 gold medals. So this guy really was him for a very, very long time. He didn't even lose the U.S. title in 1936. He relinquished it when a new tournament format was introduced. So we're looking at this game played by him and Stepan Levitsky. How the story goes of this game. This was not a tournament game. This game was played in a bar. And Frank Marshall, he could put it back. All right? He had known to put a couple back and then played this game, but he did play his most famous game of all time. This is called the gold coin game, because how the story goes is the final move was so brilliant, so pretty, so beautiful, so perfect that spectators reached into their pockets and showered the board in gold coins when they saw this final move. Now, Frank Marshall's style was crazy. He was known as a sacrificer. He was known as somebody that would blitz pieces, throw them down the board. He didn't love playing slow, boring chess. He was a crazy player, which is why so many world champions loved playing against him. Capablanca, Lasker, people loved playing against this guy. And here, Stepan Levitsky almost kind of looks like he starts with a way to negate that style with 1d4. Frank Marshall, like I said, he's not playing d4, d5, c4. He's not playing this Queen's Gambit stuff. He's playing e6. He's trying to invite him into a French, kind of pull him back into his own waters. Levitsky accepts. e4, d5, knight c3, the classical French, and now pawn to c5. Nowadays, actually, this is known as a bit of a mistake. White can very easily just take on c5, and white is just a little bit better. Back then, not really, no. c5 was thought to be totally okay, but nowadays you really won't see c5. White plays knight to f3, black plays knight to c6, white finally decides to take, but doesn't take on c5, plays a little slow, bishop to e2. White can play bishop b5, white can take on c5, but he may be trying to play a little bit against Marshall's style here, but he plays very, very slow with bishop to e2. Black develops knight f6, castles, bishop e7, bishop to g5 and castles. So we get out of the opening in a very, very simple position. Both players have just kind of developed their pieces very normally. In fact, even maybe a little bit slow. Marshall didn't really have much of a choice, but white definitely chose to kind of play a little bit more laid back. Here they finally kind of push the metal a little bit by taking this pawn. Black could immediately take back on c5, but the problem is now he's left with this weak isolated pawn. When you have an isolated pawn, your goal is to keep pieces on the board. You do not want to go into these tough endgames. Isolated pawns can become very, very weak in the endgame. White, obviously, their goal is to now trade pieces. They want to get rid of as many pieces as possible and force this isolated weakness. A lot of times, the player with the isolated pieces will even try and sacrifice the pawn and just get rid of it. Get rid of the weakness, stay down the pawn, and just go on a belligerent attack. White, a lot of times, will play what white plays in this game. Knight to d4. The idea of knight to d4 is to blockade this isolated pawn and potentially try and trade pieces. Now, Frank Marshall does not trade. He plays bishop takes c5. But you also really can't take this knight on d4. The problem with taking on d4 is now when you take and queen takes, how are you winning back this pawn on c5? Okay, rook to c8, put a little more pressure on the pawn. Now b4. I mean, what are you going to play? b6? a5? It's going to be very, very hard to try and win this pawn back. which is exactly why he decides to instead take this pawn on c5. And now white has a choice, and white rushes a little bit too. They think about the isolated pawn idea, I'm sure, and they think about having the bishop pair. They want to keep the two bishops, but he kind of helps out black. Knight takes e6 is a bit of a concession and a bit of a mistake. The problem with knight takes e6 is now one, black's pawn structure is pretty fixed. I no longer have an isolated pawn. I have what's called a hanging pawn structure, but I mean, it's not super preferred, but it's definitely better than having an isolated pawn. But the second thing, anytime a piece moves, the entire board can change, and that shows here with how now black's rook is completely opened up, and in the future, these lines coming onto f2 can become very, very dangerous for the white pieces. The problem is, though, like I said, the board changes not just for one player, also for white, which is why white plays the move bishop to g4. Bishop to g4 immediately targets this new weakness. It's a backwards pawn. I want to take this pawn. Now, it's a clever move because the idea is you cannot take on g4 because you lose your queen. However, I don't know if this was seen by Frank Marshall. Modern day engines pointed out that you absolutely can take on g4. Like I said, there's a lot of pressure on f2. And because of this, you can sacrifice this queen immediately. Because if white plays bishop takes d8, white can now, well, I keep getting the colors mixed up. Black can now play knight takes f2. Taking the knight will make you immediately worse. After takes, rook takes, I've discovered attacks coming, I can win back this bishop. My activity is very, very dangerous for white. Instead, I am hitting the queen, so let's say you get the queen out of the way, queen to e2. Now the idea is I move my knight, discover check, king has to go to h1, I trade this rook, and I have a perpetual check, and I can force a draw after a queen sacrifice. Kind of a disgusting idea. Like I said, I don't know if this was seen by Marshall, by Levitsky, by anybody, but I was playing around the engine, found this ridiculous idea.
Yeah, bishop g4. I can't believe it. I mean, nowadays, it's like e takes d4, queen takes... Hang on. Give me 1 second. Hey, do you know who I was just on the phone with? Nobody. That was just for the skit. Have you considered subscribing? Did you know it was free? And what are better things in life than free things? Plus, it just helps me out. We're just starting out here. Why don't you consider it? Now, if you don't mind. I gotta go back to this. You gotta go back to the video. Yeah. So, queen takes d4, knight c6.
Instead, black plays move queen to d6. Much more natural. Makes a lot of sense. You're getting out of the pin of this bishop. You're still protecting your e6 pawn. I mean, this could not make more sense. White gets out of the way, bishop h3, because now this is a threat. And here, black gets their final piece that's now playing into the game, rook a to e8. And white plays a move here, queen to d2. Queen to d2 is a little bit weird. Totally a fine move, but you're allowing now black to pin your knight. It gets rid of the pressure on f2, and maybe that's part of the idea along with connecting the rooks. But now all of a sudden you're kind of self-pinning yourself. And white here plays bishop takes f6. Maybe there were fears in the future of d4. Maybe there were fears in the future of knight e4. Knight e4 does not immediately work because let me just play a random move g3. If knight to e4 now, knight takes e4, and I get a tempo with the queen. So you simply cannot do that. And if you decide to take here, I can take on d6. I probably could even take back here, but taking on d6 is nice because I am also hitting your rook. So huge problem for black. You cannot do that. Instead, white takes on f6, but now rook takes f6. And this line is showed. It shows why that was so dangerous to take on e6. Yes, you gained the bishop pair, but now it's gone. It's already gone, and all you did was open up the lines for the black pieces. White brings their final piece into the game, rook to d1. And now black plays queen to c5, putting extra pressure on this knight on c3. This pawn is now bolstered and completely protected. Frank Marshall has no more fear in this position. And here, white plays queen e2. Basically saying, you could take my knight. I don't care. I'm not worried about you winning this pawn. Frank Marshall kind of looks at him, considers the bluff, and rips the knight. Bishop takes c3, pawn takes c3, and now queen takes c3. But Stepan Levitsky was a master. He was not some chump. He was still a good player, and here he found a nice tactic to try and win the material back. Take a second to find it. Quick hint to find it, you need to look at pins, which is why Levitsky in this position plays the move rook takes d5. Very nice idea. You cannot take back because I will win the rook, but it's actually worse than that. You're getting mated. White to play after pawn takes d5, mate in 3. See if you can find it before I give it away. The move, queen takes e8 check, obviously, rook to f8, and now how do you continue this attack? By bringing in the bishop, targeting the light squares that was weakened when this f-pawn left. Bishop e6 check, king to h8, queen takes f8 is mate. Nice idea. But Frank Marshall, like I said, he was a dog. He was that guy in the US for a long time. He's not plundering this. He understands the idea. He saw this, which is why he plays knight to d4, jumping in the position, threatening the queen. White plays queen to h5. This is actually a game-losing blunder. Better would have been something like queen to e4, putting extra pressure on this knight. But queen to h5 is a game-losing blunder. After the move, Marshall plays rook to f8, doubling the rooks, putting extra pressure on this f2 square, and now this king side, it looks like it has a lot of pieces here, but this little corner is getting very, very soft, especially with all of these pieces jumping in the position. White plays the move rook to e5, and Frank Marshall here can end the game. Now, it's suspected that he saw this and just wanted to play on and play something crazy. There is a winning idea here for black. Pretty easy tactic. The idea is rook takes f2. Why? Because, well, first, if you do absolutely nothing, this is just mate. Obviously, you're not just going to blunder a rook like that, but the idea is he is threatening a checkmate. If you play something like rook takes f2, well, this rook is poisonous. It is now mate in 4. I want to bring another piece to the back rank, and I can't go this way because now this rook guards, and that would be a really hilarious mistake. But Frank Marshall would have played queen to a1 check. After all of you can block with as many pieces as you want, in the end, I have a choice of which way I want to take and checkmate king. Instead, Frank Marshall didn't play this. Like I said, it was thought that he had seen this and just decided not to. He plays the move rook to h6. He says, no, let's continue this game. I want to keep playing. I want to throw your queen around a little bit. Your queen is actually running out of squares. And here, white plays the move queen to g5. Frank Marshall now detonates a nasty sacrifice. He plays the move rook takes h3. This piece cannot be touched. This is a poisonous rook. Why? Because after pawn takes h3, knight to f3 is a family fork, forking the king, the queen, and this rook on e5. And this would be such a sad way to go out. Terrible, terrible way to go out. Instead, Levitsky's like, okay, I can't take that. That's fine. But what if I put pressure on your queen first? What if I play rook to c5? Now I'm hitting your queen. You need to remove your queen. And then I can try and target this knight, maybe eventually end up taking this rook. No. This is where Frank Marshall's brilliance comes in. And here, he plays the move that forced everyone to shower the board in gold coins. Take a couple seconds, pause the video, see if you can find it. What kind of ridiculous sacrifice is Frank Marshall playing in this position? I don't even know how something like this gets found, to be honest with you. A lot of times to my students, I tell them anytime there's a puzzle, I want you to look for checks, captures, and threats. A lot of times the idea is checks and captures that make it really easy. It's the threats that make it very difficult. And in this position, Frank Marshall picks up his queen and slides it to g3. Queen to g3. Brilliant move. This queen can be taken 3 different ways, and no matter how you take it, every way loses. First of all, if you do absolutely nothing, I am taking on h2 and I'm checkmating you, so you are forced to do something. If you take me with the H-pawn. Very easy. Knight to e2, checkmate. You cannot run to the h file because my rook on h3 covers it, and my knight is hitting you from the side. What if you take with the f pawn? I have another pawn. Same idea. Knight to e2, check. This doesn't work. You cannot run to the f file because my rook on f8 covers that, and after king to h1, rook takes f1 is mate. Okay, but I can take with the queen, and this is the best move. Take it with the queen. If you want to continue the game, taking with the queen is what he should have done. But now, knight to e2 check anyway. I'm forking the king and the queen. Only move, king to h1, and now I take this queen on g3. You cannot take with the h pawn because of the pin. If you take with the f pawn, you're getting mated again, so you can't do that either. So the king is forced to go back. And now you have an option. You can take on f1. You can also play knight e2 check, king to h1, and you are just up a knight. I can play like rook c3. We're going to trade off rooks. And like I said, I'm literally just up a knight. The second this rook moves, I'm taking here, so you probably have to play something like c3, but I'm up a horse. Like this, my horse is better than no horse. Frank Marshall would 100% just win this position. But my personal favorite, and one that I did not know existed until I watched Gotham Chess's YouTube video years ago. What if white just plays the move queen to e5? I'm saying now you cannot take. Because if you take, I'll take. Rook takes, king takes. And white is winning in this position. They're just up in exchange. Here, Frank Marshall could have played the move knight to f3. That is disgusting. When have you ever seen 3 pieces thrown in front of a castled king and none of them can be taken? Everything is done. Oh, first of all, I am forking the king and the queen. That's number one. But you cannot take this knight that's checking you because of the pin from the queen on g3. So this king is forced to h1, and I would then sacrifice my queen anyway. Queen takes h2. You are forced to take, and I would take back with my rook. Rook takes h2, Arabian checkmate, where the knight and the rook work together to checkmate this king in the corner of the board. g1 is covered by my knight, and this is why everybody showered the board in gold coins for this brilliant idea from Frank Marshall. And this really kind of showed his style of chess. He wasn't going to play a slow game with d4, d5. No, he brings you to a French, pulls you into his waters. Plays a line that's not great. Okay, he sacrifices. Now he finds a win, says he doesn't want to play it, finds something nastier. That is what embodies Frank Marshall's chess style and why this is my favorite chess game of all time. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, subscribe, show some love. Like I said, I'm just trying to start out. Feel free. Let me know what feedback. I tried putting in mic this time. Hopefully the audio is a little bit better. Wasn't great in the last one. So let me know. But anyway, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.